different slant than maybe what we think. We want to talk about that today. So we're going to speak a little bit about this interesting definition, which is being faithful and true to our duties, relations, and ideals. Now, that doesn't mean ideas. Oh, I have this idea, and so I'm going to adopt it. It's some really core understandings and beliefs that you hold dear. And, you know, this is a little different sometimes than when we think about loyalty, because in my life, you know, I grew up in a town in Maryland called Bethesda. And the baseball team at that time that was closest to me, professional baseball team, were the Washington Senators. They don't exist anymore. Now they're the Texas Rangers. But at that time, they really weren't very good. But just down the freeway, down the Beltway, was Baltimore. And that was the home of the Baltimore Orioles. And in the 60s, that's a long, long time ago. When I grew up about your age, I was a loyal Baltimore fan. And, you know, even though I moved halfway across the country to Denver, I still was a loyal Baltimore fan. Even though I went to college in Nebraska, I was a loyal Baltimore Oriole fan. And even I got my first job not too far from here in Lancaster, I remember my wife going into labor with our second baby in 1983, watching the Baltimore Orioles beat the Philadelphia Phillies in the World Series. Now, that was not more important than my daughter being born, but those things, I was a great Baltimore Oriole fan. I knew the team, the lineup, I was loyal to them until I moved to St. Louis. And I discovered this whole other world. What was Cardinal Nation? I learned all about the St. Louis Cardinals. And I actually got to know a couple of them. And they were actually members in my church. And, I got to know Fred Bird pretty good. You know who Fred Bird is? Okay, he's their awesome mascot. And, suddenly my blood turned from black to red. And I was a very loyal St. Louis Cardinal fan, and still am to this day. But, I changed. Something that was really important to me at one time shifted. And I kind of lost that. Now I couldn't even tell you much about it. I know Mr. Herrera every once in a while, we talk about that, but he knows a lot more about the Orioles than I do. But this is a little bit different idea. Even some people, if Mr. Spival was here today, right? He is a Bronco fan all the way. There's nothing that's going to shift his loyalties. We all know that, right? Yes. That's Mr. Spival. And, we learn a little bit about what lasting loyalty is as we come here every assembly and every chapel, as we think about what we're really loyal to. And the reason why we are loyal to those ideals of our country and our God is because we live in this country, because our country has these ideals, we are able to do this. We're able to come into a place and not just celebrate the freedoms that we so enjoy, but we also celebrate a God who loves and cares for us. Now, there are people in time who have done amazing things in our country because of ideals. And we've kind of talked about some of these people in our assemblies because they exemplify some loyal ideals that they held true to. Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. And Delano Roosevelt, who was a president during World War II, a very, very difficult time in our country's history. Martin Luther King, who stood up for ideals of equality in our country, made a big shift. And the guy on the right-hand side, his name is Billy Graham. Some of you may not really know him because he's a he doesn't look like that anymore. He's a very old individual today. He's lived a lot of years. And he stood up and he says, you know what? I want to travel the whole country and tell people about Jesus. And he really influenced hundreds of thousands of lives